Alright, let's take a look at some of the advanced features of the GoToWebinar integration to Infusionsoft. The main one is webinar tracks, and then there's also posting back to webinars. And we'll look at an example that uses both. So let's say somebody was buying 12 live webinars over the next 12 months. But let's throw a little wrench in this and say that somebody can sign up in August and get 12 months from August. Another person might sign up in December and they'll get 12 months from December, but these are all live webinars. So you can't, in that situation, you can't just go into GoToWebinar and say, I want to sign people up for a webinar series, because it's going to force you to use the same webinar series. And what we're talking about is people getting the next 12 webinars from whenever they sign up, and that date doesn't matter. So in the implementation we're talking about, you would go and you would make all your webinars beforehand, and then you would put your contact or your people inside Infusionsoft, you would put them into a follow-up sequence, and that sequence is going to send a post to the gateway every 30 days for 12 months. So it's basically going to send 12 different posts 30 days apart, and each time that post arrives at the gateway, it's going to put the person into the next coming webinar. So depending on when they sign up, they will get the next 12 webinars. Another thing that's valuable about this is you can then pause the sequence or remove them if they don't pay. You can just basically cut off their webinars, whereas if in GoToMeeting you were to put them into a webinar series, they would just get all of them. This is also automated, so you don't have to do anything after you set it up. And then again, I'll show you the relevance of posting back to Infusionsoft. So for this demonstration, I did do some prep work. What I did is I went and made a full year of webinars inside of GoToWebinar. So you can see here at the very beginning, I created a webinar that's coming up September 15th, 2010 at noon Mountain Time. I did Wednesday, October 13th at noon Mountain Time, Wednesday, November 10th at noon, Wednesday, December 15th at noon, and so on and so forth, all the way until I get back to August and July. So I've got 12 webinars that I went in. That's the first part of the homework I did. The other thing that I did is I went and I created 12 tags, one for each of the webinars, that just says registered. So I'm saying the year 2010, the month 9, Infusionsoft Mastery, monthly registered is the tag name. And we will be making, and I'll just go ahead and make one now. I'm going to copy this tag name and create one more new tag. And that, instead of registered, is going to say attended. So same thing in September of 2010, attended, and I'll add that tag. So this is what your tags are going to look like. They're either going to be registered per webinar or attended per webinar. And if I look at my categories here and I just go down to webinars, you can see that usually with webinars I will put the actual date, the full date. So 2010-07-14 is the date of it. But since these are monthly, it doesn't really matter to me which date. I know that information anyways. So again, a little bit of homework beforehand, and then what I would do is I would come into my gateway here and I would log in, and once I get in here, I would add all these webinars that I just created. So first thing I would do is I would need to find out each of their webinar IDs. So I come down here to September and I say, okay, what is the webinar ID for September? I do that by clicking Edit, and then I scroll over and I can see WID, or webinar ID, is this 9288. If I come in here and I go to, under GoToWebinar, I go to Your Webinars, this is in the MoldingSoft Gateway, I can now add all of these things. And so I'm going to click on Add Webinar, and the important thing here is I'm actually going to put all of these in their own track. So Add Webinar, there's my key, www1 is still correct, this one is on 9/22, and the track is IM, or in other words, Infusionsoft Mastery is what I'm doing here. And then my time zone is Mountain. So those are the relevant things: the webinar key, Infusionsoft Mastery, the date of the webinar, and the webinar server. And then this is where I was going to say we can do a little bit of this extra credit stuff. So in this situation where the person or people might be added to different webinars, it's important that I put a tag here, because then I know when the person was added for the September webinar inside of Infusionsoft. So all I need here is the tag ID. So I'm going to look right here. This is 2010-09, registered 2357. I'm just going to pop that tag ID in here and hit save. Now, in order for this to work, in order for the tagging back to work, there is another setting you need to go do, and that is under your services. If you have not already, you need to go to the Infusionsoft API and put in your API name. For example, mine is Tech Portal, because when I'm in Infusionsoft, my application name is Tech Portal, and then to get my key, I would go to Setup, down to Miscellaneous Settings. I would go to Application Settings here, Miscellaneous Settings here, and I won't go down all the way and show you my key, but basically the API key is just below this. There's another field just below that that has the API key, which is something that you want to keep secret. You don't just spread it around, but you would take that key and you would put it here inside of the MoldingSoft gateway so that we can post these tags back for you on your webinar registration. So I'm going to pause the video and do that real quick for mine. So with that done, I'll go back to my webinars and I'll continue adding them. So you can see this is the Infusionsoft Mastery webinar for September. You can see this was the Infusionsoft Mastery for August. And if I were to post to the Infusionsoft Mastery track now, obviously it realizes August is in the past and it's going to choose September as the webinar to put people into. So I can just keep going down that same route. And I'll do one more with you and then I'll go do them on my own and pause the video. But let me go, to my webinars. I'm back in GoToWebinar. I go to my webinars and I'm looking for the October webinar, which is right here. And again, I can click edit. Any one of these edit keys will basically give me the webinar key up in the URL. And so I'll grab this webinar key. I'll enter it here again. The track is Infusionsoft Mastery. The time zone for me anyways is Mountain. And the date of this one is 10/13. And make sure I've got that right. Check in here. But I believe, yes, the date is 10/13. So let's see if I need anything else. And again, I have the option to tag back. This isn't something you want to do, but since this is variable, it's something that's very helpful to do. So here I am at my webinars, and the tag for October 2010 is 2359. So I'd put that tag right here, and of course I could run other action sets, but I don't really need to. I do want to know, though, that this person was put into the October webinar. So I'll save this thing, and I'll pause the video and do the rest of these. Okay, so I've now added all 12 webinars from September, October, all the way through August of 2011, you can see here. And I put them all in the same time zone, and then they all have tags. And you can see since I added those tags all at once, the tags just count up in number. But now with these webinars, as long as I send someone to the webinar with the track IM, they will be put into whatever's next webinar. Until October 13th, they'll be put into this one. Starting October 14th, they'll begin going into the November webinar and so forth. So the last thing I need to do is I need to set up my follow-up sequence that's actually going to make this post over and over and over again. So before you make your follow-up sequence, one thing that you'll want to do is go ahead and create an action set specifically to put people into this webinar series. So what I would say is add an action set. This is going to come up, and I'm going to call this one GTW Post IM track. And then within this, I'm going to again send this HTTP post to another server, and I can get the post address that I'm looking for from here in the MoldingSoft gateway. So I'll copy this whole address. I'll come back to Infusionsoft and post that right there. And what I'm looking for is the track. So now it's the exact same link as I had before. GTW ID is 7129, but the track ID is now IM. And I can save this. And now this action set is that post always, right? So I'm just doing that as a shortcut so I don't have to remember it. And that way, I'm going to come to my follow-up sequence that I've started making here. So I've got Infusion Mastery clients, webinars for 12 months is what this sequence is doing. And the steps are a little bit unique. So here's what's happening. The actions on every single one of these needs to be the same. If I open up my actions here, I should, and let me shrink my window down once again, but the action that I want here under first webinar and all of the actions, like I'm saying, are going to be the exact same. It's just basically going to be this post to the IM track. And I can just make this post over and over and over again in every single one of these. And I'll show you exactly how that works. But let's say I did a couple of these. Sorry, let me just copy it. That's easier. So post IM track, copy, bam. So you can see every action in here would be a post. Webinar 1, or the registration for Webinar 1, would be delay 0 days. So let's actually look at this follow-up sequence step. So webinar 1, what I'm saying is run a step X days after the person is added. I'm going to say in this case 0 days, and I want to always run this step on a certain day of the week. So, day of the week or month, and I'm choosing month and the 9th. If you actually look at my listing of webinars, I made them all after the 10th. So this first one is the 22nd, then I have the 13th, 10th, 15th, 12th, so the 9th is going to be a safe day for me to use as my standard. So what I'm saying is round to a day of the month, make it the 9th, and check the box to round forward. And what this means is it's going to take the next 9th every single time. And the reason that this is helpful is if you don't check that and someone were to sign up after the 9th, they would actually get something weird where they would get 2 posts in 1 month. So just trust me here. Make sure whatever your day of the month is, it is before any of the webinars you've scheduled. So try to schedule, if you're doing a monthly webinar, kind of at the same time each month if you can. And then this step, the actual action here, is it's going to run some actions, and then you saw the actions that we ran. So that's each step, and let me jump out of this and make a new one. So I did that number 1. Number 2 is the exact same, except it's delayed 30 days, 60 days, 90 days for 3, 4, and 5. Let me show you webinar 5. So I'll go start to finish. I would say run some actions, and I'm going to say this one is 120 days out. I'm going to round to a day of the month. It's the 9th. I'm going to round forward, and webinar 5. Save and create the actions. It's going to pop up at me, and when it does, as soon as I resize this window again and go to the Actions tab, again, I'm just going to copy this existing post into the IM track. Easy enough. Save it. So you can kind of see the pattern, and once I get up to webinar 12, what that means is whoever gets added to this sequence is going to get all of these things. So let me show you an example. Let me look up my record here. So here I am, and I might already be in this sequence, so I'm just going to remove it. So we'll remove that Infusion Mastery sequence, but let me show you what would happen if someone was added to this thing. So I add myself to the sequence, and you can see here it's scheduled steps. So it says, okay, on September 9th, run the first, October 9th, November 9th, December 9th, January 9th. And if you look at my set of webinars, what's going to happen is on September 9th, it's of course going to pick this one because everything else is in the past. It's not in the gold track, it's in the IM track. So first of all, it's going to say, of those in the IM track, the next one that hasn't passed is September. Then when it posts on October 9th, it's going to say, okay, this one is passed, this one is next. When it posts on November 9th, it's of course going to grab that one, December, January, and so on. So you can probably see how that's going to work over time. Each of these posts is going to be the exact same post, but as that post is made, it's looking at the track, and then it's identifying the next webinar coming up. And then the bonus piece is, as that post is made, it tags back to Infusionsoft. So my record here, if I actually were to look at my tags, let's go up here, edit tags. So in the webinar category, I currently have no tags, right? So let me go to my follow-up sequences and say, go ahead and run this first action. Run the September action, okay? And if I give it a second and refresh it again, because just know these actions take a couple seconds to run, but if I refresh it again, you can see down here I now have the tag 2010-09 Infusionsoft Mastery webinars. And this is, if I look at the tag detail by going up here to tags, remember this is the registered tag. So it's just saying that it registered me for that webinar. And the great thing about this, even though it took me a little bit of setup time just now, when I'm done with this, it means I don't have to do anything for these webinars for the next 12 months. As long as when someone buys my product, they get added to this lovely follow-up sequence that I made, they are going to be put into those webinars automatically without me having to do anything for the next 12 months. And so I just need to know at some point in the next 12 months I need to spend, about 20-30 minutes again and schedule all the webinars for the next year. So it's not too bad, really. I mean, it may seem a little bit tedious when you're setting it up, but the fact that once it is set up, you don't have to do anything for a year makes it really sweet. You just have to show up and actually, be on those different webinars that you scheduled. You just have to show up and lead the webinars, and the rest of it is already done for you. And these people, by the way, The reason that it's nice to stagger these out instead of just slap the person into every single webinar that's coming up is this means that they get these emails over time. So on October 9th, it would register me for the webinar, and that means on October 9th, I would get an email from GoToWebinar saying, thanks for your registration. The Infusionsoft Mastery October webinar is coming up in a few days, blah, blah, blah. We'll send you some reminders. So it's self-sustaining once you've set it up this way. I hope this video helps you. Good luck.